just do a quick off-cap introduction.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome and happy you can join us. Cameras are off right now and microphones are off for attendees. So you can watch and relax and have an evening beverage if you like, and enjoy Colin here, Colin Hirtle from the department. And he is going to talk about the livestock fencing guidelines from 2013 and bring in some of the pasture manual that we were able to update under OFCAF. So this webinar is, I guess, funded under the On-Farm Climate Action Fund, and the program is now officially open. So we are, I think, closing it for this fiscal by the end of August. So I will actually, in the chat, I will put the website for OFCAF there. OFCAF is a cost share program through the through the feds that is to implement rotational grazing, nitrogen management, and cover cropping on farm. So it's been happening for 3 years and it's just opened up for another 3 years. So with that, there is a learning component to OFCAF to provide technical training for both producers and agronomists. So that's why we're able to do webinars and field days and workshops and everything like that. So without further ado, I will pass it over to you, Colin. And yeah, this webinar is recorded tonight, so we will have it on our website through Perennia if you're wanting to revisit it again.
Yes, thanks, Georgia. I think I just got John got in. Okay, good. I was texting him earlier. So yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming here tonight. And yeah, we're just going to be discussing the previously released livestock fencing guidelines from 2013. A lot of people, I don't think, know about this resource, but it's just a great resource. So that's what we thought about, to just go over it and discuss its content. So just a brief introduction here. So this manual was developed in 2013 to outline the fencing guidelines for each of the following species: cattle, horses, sheep, goats, swine, poultry, game birds, and ratites. So ratites are emus and rheas and ostriches, if anybody doesn't know that. So it outlines in detail information about designing a fence system, fencing problems and challenges, and also gives you some resources and recommendations, reading recommendations at the end. Georgia, would you be able to link to the document in the chat?
Yes, I can do that, no problem.
Maybe also the pasture manual?
Yes, I can do that. And if anyone is looking for a physical copy of the pasture manual, you can email us at programs@perennia.ca, and I'll put that email address in the chat for you. So we've printed off nice copies and we can mail them to you. So I'll put those links in the chat.
Yeah. So, we all know that proper fencing is essential for controlling livestock, protecting the animals from predators, and it's also important for good pasture management. These livestock fencing guidelines describe 3 types of fencing commonly used here in Nova Scotia: electric fence, barbed wire, page wire. And we'll cover construction techniques, materials, appropriate dimensions, and some tips as well. As a minimum, all livestock farms should have a permanent perimeter fence capable of keeping the livestock on the owner's property. That's kind of the whole intent of a fence, except in Newfoundland, where they apparently got a rule that states you fence animals out on the Northern Peninsula. So the perimeter fence should be constructed of sturdy posts and wire that is securely fastened with appropriate hardware. Livestock farmers with land in certain exposed areas next to major highways or schoolyards, for example, may need to build their fences to a higher standard. Any fencing systems can fail due to circumstances beyond the owner's control. Examples include power outages, when electric fencer won't work, snow accumulation. Livestock may break through fences if they're roaming in search of food, so owners should ensure that adequate water and feed are available at all times. In general, owners need to manage their fences on an ongoing basis to ensure they function continuously, and take the measures necessary to keep the animals from escaping. So I think we forgot to say, Georgia, we'll just hold questions to the end.
Yes, that sounds
Yeah.
good. And I can moderate that at the end.
Yeah. So we're just gonna dive right in here. A quick overview for the different species of the fencing requirements for each. Starting off with cattle, and then we're going to dive into more of the construction materials and that kind of thing. So, with cattle, almost any type of common fencing material can be used to contain cattle. Uh, Considerations need to be given to include longevity, durability, cost of materials, as well as the ease of construction. Historically, barbed wire fences were used for cattle enclosures. However, in recent years, barbed wire has given way to electric fencing or a combination of electric fencing and other fence materials. Enclosures for cattle generally consist of an outside perimeter fence that's 44 to 48 inches in height, as well as temporary division fences used within the perimeter for pasture management. Where bulls are separated from cows, fences should be made stronger using larger posts, heavier gauge wire, more strands of wire, or heavier board rails, or similar reinforcements. Not going to talk a lot about horses tonight, but just to kind of touch on it quickly, visibility is the primary consideration for horses. For this reason, board fences allow the horses to readily see. Electric fences are also effective, such as poly bands and poly ribbons. Page wire fences will also work, but board or strand electric fencing should be included along the top to prevent the horses from reaching over top. Barbed wire, which can easily cut horses' skin, should not be used for horses. Sheep and goats. Of course, all fencing has the purpose of keeping predators out, but it's a heightened consideration when it comes to sheep and goats. Um, so yeah, keeping the sheep inside the perimeter fencing and providing protection from predators is the main concern. A well-built page wire fence will serve a sheep farmer very well for many years. Electric fencing is also recommended. Barbed wire is not as effective as they become quickly clogged with wool. So like sheep, goats are well served by page wire and electric fencing. In goat enclosures, it's important that the fences are uniform and consistent without any gaps or weaknesses, especially in dips and pastures or ditches. Um, that just like I don't know if we discussed this yet, but especially for sheep and goats, you can use page wire in combination with electric wire to hold them off the fence and uh, make sure that they don't damage the fence or get through it in other ways. For swine, swine require a strong fence, page wire, electric fence, barbed wire, all options. Although the height doesn't need to be nearly as tall as for other species. It doesn't need to exceed 54 inches. Pay particular attention to the bottom of the fences in order to prevent the pigs from burying the wire and escaping. That's common for them to uh, push sod over onto the fence and short it out. So electric fencing, 12 inches from the ground or a strand of barbed wire strung near the bottom of the fence enclosures will help them prevent rooting. I have less experience fencing poultry and game birds and ratites, but um, even they need fencing as well. Um, Containment on the owner's property and also protection from aerial predators needs to be considered. Fencing materials suitable for containing poultry and game birds can include chicken wire, electric netting, chain link, page wire. Just options smaller size holes in them to keep the chickens in. And again, not as much experience fencing in emus, so I assume that maybe a regular page wire dimensions would work for those. And of course, yeah, like I said, consideration, especially for aerial predators. So, just as important as the strength of the fence is the training that the livestock receive. Untrained animals can go through a fence in a breeze, especially electric fence. Um, Electric fencing is a mental barrier rather than a physical barrier, and so a spooked animal can run through the fence easily, um, and cause issues on the other side of it. Um, so the success of fencing depends on training the livestock to respect the boundary. It'll save many hours of time and labor rounding up the livestock and repairing fences if they're well trained. So when releasing young stock or turning out animals in the spring, try the following. Establish a small training area, and this is also important for pigs and piglets, and when releasing them onto pasture. Have a small training area with a single strand of electric wire around it, just to teach them the importance of respecting that fence. You can leave the livestock inside the training area for a few days to become familiar with the fencing before putting them out to pasture. For electric fencing, place a charged wire uh, inside the corral or barnyard fence where there's little chance of the animals to escape. So it's important to have, especially in the training arena, to have a physical barrier behind it. So especially like when a pig or a calf hits that fence, they know that they can't go through it, so that they learn to back off of it instead of bolt through it. Um, since electric fencing is a psychological barrier rather than a physical one, it's particularly important to train them to respect the fence. So now we're going to discuss the design of the fence system rather than the species requirements. I think we'd all be really happy if we had flat, level, square pastures to fence. It would make it so much easier. Um, but everybody's land has different considerations, and Perennia has done workshops in the past. I remember one down at St. Mary's Bay Community Pasture where we actually talked about the design of the pasture system on the land base. Tonight we're not going to talk about that. This manual talks more about the design of the structure, uh, like the H braces and the building materials. Um, so yeah, everybody's land base is different. We don't have flat square pastures to fence. So you'll have to take this information into consideration on how to implement it on your property. Um, so taking into consideration where your gates go, where your water access is, maybe future expansion or future change of use. I remember Jonathan Wart, when he was the beef specialist, said to me that the fence will change 3 or 4 different times in the lifetime of the farm. So I don't know if that stops only because people get tired of fencing it again, or they finally solidify their fencing plans. But I know myself at home, I've added on to it and changed where division fences are. As your herds expand, you'll want larger size paddocks, and so all of those things will change. So on permanent fence, on level or rolling terrain, posts should be spaced every 2 to 3 meters. Fewer fence posts allow the fence to absorb the impact and bend back rather than break. In hilly areas, extra posts should be placed in both high and low spots to prevent gaps and future failures. I remember hearing in the news a while back about some buffalo up in Tatamagouche area, and the people had failed to fence some of the ditches and drainage areas, and I think they went through there based on my memory. Um, so yeah, all permanent fencing systems require strong braces at the corners. Uh, very long fence lines will require braces within the line too. So fence braces for corners, gates, and midline braces, they all properly hold up the fence, gates, and corner braces. They must be constructed correctly. So the most common one here, I don't think they can see my mouse, but this is the H brace. You'll notice it's got a wooden horizontal piece along with wire or a cable, guy wire that goes from the top of the post to the bottom of the corner post. This really adds a lot of rigidity to those posts. I know when I have constructed these at home, when you finally tighten down those guy wires and you kind of pull on the fence post, it stiffens it right up and adds a lot of strength to it. So these brace posts, the corner posts and brace posts should be 4 to 6 inch diameter posts, and should be about 6 to 8, 6.5, 8 foot long. They should be driven in the ground as much as 3 feet or more, so that it's just 5.5 feet or so exposed. This gives it a really good solid contact. Um, it's really important to have a low angle for your guy wire going to the bottom of the outer post, because if you have, say, just a 4 foot horizontal brace, the steep angle of that guy wire will actually pop out your corner post and pull it up. And probably, people in this call here tonight will probably have seen corner posts pulled out of the ground, and that's mainly the reason. I've got one at home right now that's doing the exact same thing. And you've probably seen it on the side of the road where they'll have a cradle of a big rock that's trying to hold the post down. But lengthening that H brace horizontal piece will help to increase that, and also getting a good footing and drive that deeper into the soil will help solidify that. So for strength, the horizontal crossbar should be spiked between the brace and the end posts. You'll see people online drilling a hole through, and they have a 4 or 5 or 6 inch metal rod that they'll stick into the post and into the center of the horizontal brace. That just holds everything together, and then that guy wire cinches everything down tight. It's important to not reverse the way that the guy wires are, and by that I mean have the wire on the corner post on the top, and then on the brace post the bottom, because that doesn't do the desired effect. On a 3-stranded fence post, I think this one is 5. You'll see that the brace post is below or in between the top 2 wires. So it's just how to design it. You don't need to have that horizontal piece right at the top of the post. It's all about cinching it down nice and tight. Fences with more than 5 wire strands require a double H brace, so just be doubling this. Fences with more than 650-foot long run will require double H brace along the length of the fence as well, just to make sure to sturdy it up. So here's just an image out of the manual, which talks about recommended wire height and the recommended minimum voltage of the electric wire. So like it says here, for cattle, about 1 meter high, for sheep and goats 61 centimeters, But you'll notice for predator protection and sheep and goats, you want to increase the voltage there to about 5,000 volts compared to 3 for cattle. Just with the wool as an insulator, it helps to have that more of a kick to keep the sheep off the fence. So now we're going to talk specifically about electric fencing, and I've got a little bit ahead here on my notes. But like we said earlier, an electric fence is it's a psychological barrier rather than a physical barrier. So uh, it's not about having something that an animal can't get through. More about making sure that they don't want to try it. So this manual, of course, provides a lot more details about electric fencing than the other types of fencing, just because it's so much more versatile, a permanent fence option than the other ones, other types like barbed wire and page wire. It's easily constructed, uh, medium cost to build compared to page wire and barbed wire. And in addition to being relatively economical, it can be set up to control all classes of pastured livestock. It can also be combined with other types of fencing to provide extra protection. So like I said about adding electric wire to the page wire or electric to the barbed wire, it can help improve the level of protection. So when properly installed, electric fences can last for 20 years or more, and well maintained as well. Electric fencing can be used for boundary and interior fences and as either a permanent or temporary installation. It can also be used in areas where other types of fences are not convenient, such as where the fencing must be moved fairly regularly. And a great example is in rotational grazing, which the off-calf program is promoting farmers to implement. Um, so yeah, it's not designed to be a physical barrier, rather it's meant to be psychological. The memory of the previous negative experience, receiving the shock, deters the animal from attempting to cross the barrier again. The top wire should always be hot to prevent the animals from leaning over and pushing on the fence. As well, a predator fence should always have a hot bottom wire. Always position one hot wire at the shoulder height of the animal to be controlled. That's a good general rule of the height of the fence uh, as well. When first setting up a temporary fence, check the voltage at the point as far away from the furthest point from the charger as possible. That'll tell you if you have a strong enough fence energizer as you need. It should not be less than half of what it is before the fence was connected. If it is, and assuming that the ground is functioning properly, a more powerful energizer may be required. I'm not going to go into the details of how electric fence charger works. I think we all know the basics of that. It generates a short high voltage impulse that is sent through the fence line, and when the animal touches it, the circuit is completed and sends and shocks the animal by sending current traveling through the soil to the grounding rod. In electric fence systems, voltage typically ranges from 3,000 to 10,000 volts. The quantity of energy, joules, is partly what deters animals from touching the fence. Voltage is also important because a certain amount is required to overcome resistance, example, a sheep with its wool, and allow the energy to flow. The minimum voltage should be above 3,000 kilovolts, 3 kilovolts to be effective for most large livestock. However, sheep and other animals with heavy coats require a higher voltage. Most problems with low voltage can be attributed to insufficient ground or inadequate system components that are grounding out the system. And I don't think John would let me get away with not mentioning black bear protection from beehives. It's often a much shorter run, but you still want to have a nice high output fence so that bear doesn't get tempted with going through the fence. So electric fencing, there's so many different varieties and components and options that can be used to save time and labor on the farm. Um, the selection of components will depend on how the fence is to be used. Longer lasting materials are more important for permanent boundary fencing than for portable fences. Permanent and boundary fences usually employ very durable 12.5 gauge high tensile wire. Temporary fences are typically constructed with 1 to 3 strands of visible wire on portable step-in posts or on tumble wheels. These fence posts should be highly insulated, either using fiberglass or plastic posts or steel posts with high-quality insulators. Acceptable materials include various gauges of steel wire, polywire, and poly tape. I got to try out some tumble wheels last summer at Webster's Farm in the Living Labs program, and I really liked them. They're really handy when you have two people to advance it down the fence, but I think by the end of summer, I ended up just using it as a back fencing in the pasture, just because it, was a lot easier to move behind the cattle than ahead of the cattle. And but the neat way that they're engineered, the aluminum legs on the fence, the ones that aren't touching the ground are actually electrified, so it provides a lot more protection um, than the older models that didn't do that, just electrified the wire. So here's just an example. It's recommending to run wire through a water hose underneath the gate. It just helps to carry the electricity across to the other side of the gate. Um, you'll still want to use a high quality insulated wire inside of that water hose, but it's a good way to protect the wire and prevent it from shorting out in that distance. So grounding and energizers. So when choosing a fence energizer, you want to purchase one that is suited to the class of livestock and from a reputable dealer who understands the complexities of electric fencing and grounding requirements. In general, low impedance energizers are a better choice because they increase the shock through the line if vegetation touches the fence. When I started with my cattle, I think I just kept the same fencer as when I just had a couple horses. So a half a joule or a half a kilovolt charger, and my nephew, he would grab a hold of the fence and he could just take the shock. And so I quickly upgraded to a 6.5 volt fencer, and he learned not to grab it. But uh, my soils at home are very sandy, and so my problem is having sufficient grounding. And when the cattle are up over the hill on an August where the soil is fairly dry, that current just can't travel back as well to the energizer through the soil. So having the right sized energizer is really important, especially considering those soil conditions. So it recommends at least 3 rods, spaced 3 meters apart. Um, and there's a recommendation of 1 grounding rod for every 5 joules of fencer output. And just to kind of skip back here for a second, solar and battery operated energizers are useful in remote locations, but can be more expensive and require more maintenance. And they're also really attractive to thieves. Um, a good grounding system is the cause of a poor grounding system is the cause of the majority of electric fence failures, and it's imperative that the ground system is installed correctly in order for the circuit to be easily completed. So last summer I added 2 more fencing grounding rods to the fence, and it doubled the output on it, and so that was a real big difference in keeping the cattle in. There, yeah, should be a minimum of 3 rods, one for every 5 joules. They should be about 6.5 foot long in order to try and reach down into that moisture in the soil, and make sure to have them at least 10 feet apart. Um, Choose an area that's normally damp and avoid covered areas, so not inside or beside a barn. But I actually find I placed my grounding rods along the drip edge of my shed roof, and so there'd be a lot more moisture going into the soil there than elsewhere after a rain, especially. Um, and I think there's other things, maybe calcium chloride that you could do to add and maybe maintain that soil moisture in the soil by mixing it in. I don't know environmentally if that's a good choice or not. I'm not sure. Not recommending it, not not endorsing it. um, so yeah, to avoid stray voltage is it's really important to understand. Keep a minimum of 50 feet away from utility grounding rods, underground telephone wires or power cables, underground water pipe or milking parlors. Um, Use a grounding rod clamp to attach the insulated cable or bare 12.5 gauge wire to the grounding rod furthest from the charger. So it's really important to have a continuous wire connecting your grounding rods instead of individual runs. It just allows for better conductivity. So yeah, run the wire to the next rod and attach it with a clamp back to the charger. Um, Test the ground system with a voltmeter. Uh, you can do that by using your electric fence tester to the grounding rod, and there's instructions online and probably in the instruction manual for Energizer as well. It's a really good way to test your grounding system. Keep the fence clear of vegetation. I think early spring, this is the time of year that vegetation, nice green vegetation is laying on the fence, and that's going to really draw down your charge on your fence. The other thing to consider is adding a surge protector and lightning diverter to your energizer. That'll prevent energy surges from the grid, from wrecking your energizer, and also lightning striking your fence from destroying it too. So it's good to protect the investment. So now we're just going to quickly cover some back to cattle, but specifically electric fencing here. So perimeter fence, 2 to 4 strands is sufficient. Height of the permanent fence should be 40 inches. Wires should be spaced about a foot apart. When I'm fencing, I usually just use my hammer as the gauge, and I usually just choose a spot on my hips to kind of remember where I'm setting the wire at instead of whipping out the measuring tape every post. Um, Interior fences can be 1 to 2 strands. Training the cattle to a single strand of fence is a game changer. It makes moving them through rotated pastures much easier. Height of temporary fences should be no less than 36 inches, and wires should be spaced a foot apart. Uh, Voltage should be at least 3,000 volts to hold all classes of cattle in and prevent escapes. So sheep, I had Donald read over my slides here earlier, and he reminded me that I'm breaking the rules of slideshow presentations here with having too many words on a slide, but here we are. So yeah, since sheep are more insulated by their wool, a grounding return system may work better to increase the amount of shock. So that's where you're having a grounded rod, a grounded wire, and a hot wire intermittently on your fence. So the bottom one will be hot, the next one will be ground, and so when they connect the two of them, they're getting direct connection to the ground through the wires rather than through the soil. And that increases the amount of shock and keeps the sheep off the fence better. Uh, Perimeter fence, 5 to 6 strands is sufficient. Um, Wire spacing of permanent fences, bottom 3 wires are 6 inches apart. The next wire should be 10 inches apart, and the highest wire should be 12 inches apart. Interior fences, 2 to 4 strands are sufficient. I think if there's sheep producers here on the call, you might be familiar with um, the Gallagher speed fence, which has all the wires strung onto fence posts right in one unit, and you can reel that out all in one go. That makes it much quicker to put down as many strands. Wire spacing of temporary fences. So the bottom wire should be 8 to 12 inches off the ground, and the other separated by 12 inches. For added predator protection, increasing the number of wires. Another option, although harder to maintain, is to install a low electrified offset wire around the exterior perimeter of the fence, a foot out and 6 inches off the ground. Just prevents animals from digging in. And again, voltage should be a minimum of 5,000 volts to effectively deter the sheep from pushing through it. So now that we've covered electric fencing, we can quickly touch on barbed wire. So barbed wire we see it mostly used for cattle. Generally, this type of fence consists of wooden posts with no fewer than 3 wires on it on the perimeter. The wires may be either the traditional double strand barbed wire or newer single strand type. Anchor, corner, and stretch posts must be wood. The line posts may be wood or steel, such as T-posts. Because galvanized fence wire is often sound after 10 to 15 years of exposure, it pays to use pressure treated wood or galvanized steel fence posts. Even if the initial investment cost is greater, pressure treated posts are recommended as they are safer to handle than wood treated with other preservatives. The staples that you use should be 1.5 to 1.75 galvanized steel, and should be driven obliquely at a slight downward angle. And so I always, when I'm driving a fencing staple, I always make sure to try and not put the staple in the same grain of the wood. That just allows it to grab a little bit better. And you've probably all seen where you can just pull a staple right out from a crack created by driving it in just completely vertically. Trying to catch up here in my notes. Yeah, when stapling the wire to the line post, don't hammer the staples tight. That allows that wire to freely move and allows you to tighten it as needed. At the initial construction, start the wire at the corner post by wrapping it around and stapling it to the post, and then tension the wire at a brace post on the opposite end from where it's attached, and then attach the line post with staples. Some tips that the guidelines that the manual talks about is, of course, wearing good quality gloves, leather gloves most specifically. Posts should be pressure treated, should be 10 to 12 feet apart. Wires should be 12 inches apart. Double wrap the wire in the corner posts, no staples. That allows it to, the double wrap prevents it from kind of slipping back and loosening. Make as straight a run as possible with the fences. Corner posts tend to pull out from tension. Use either dead man braces or the in the ground or cross braces. So cross braces where you have guy wires in the shape of an X. In most conditions in Nova Scotia, you can use the crowbar to create the holes and pound with a maul or a tractor bucket. I've seen people take a scoop of soil in the tractor bucket and just gives that much more weight to push the posts in. It's amazing what a good set of fencing pliers will do to help you through the day. Something that's not dull. And it's important to place the wire on the inside of the pasture where possible, so that the cattle will be pushing on the wire instead of pushing it off. Page wire has broad livestock use. It's common fencing material found in many farms throughout the region. Fencing manufacturers supply a variety of fence height, so wire sizes and wire spacings to suit every need. For cattle and horses, you can use fencing 42 to 48 inches high. For sheep and pigs, 32 to 36 inches high is fine. For extra security, add a barbed wire or electric wire to the top of the fence. That prevents animals from reaching over and pushing on the fence. If fencing sheep, the electric wire should be near the bottom of the fence. Corner and brace posts should be constructed as described previously. In new construction, once the posts are in place and pounded into the ground, the page wire is rolled out and lifted into place. There should be some tension on the wire to prevent sagging. Again, good pair of gloves to install it. 1.5 to 1.75 staples, pressure treated posts, driven in the ground, leaving 4.5, 5 foot exposed. Straight runs where possible is really important for page wire as well. And if you do need to make turns, just do a slight turn. Corner posts may tend to pull out from tension again with this type of fencing. Yeah, and again, it's important to place the wire on the inside of the pasture so that the cattle or sheep are pushing it against the posts instead of away from off the post, popping the staples out. So this is just a table I took off of the pasture manual. I took this out of the old pasture manual. I don't know if it was updated in the new version, but it just has a real good, quick look at what the different fencing types are. So, like it says, barbed wire. It's easy to install. Disadvantages are that it can cause injury to the animals. It's high maintenance. It's not predator proof. It's not portable and movable. Relatively medium cost, and it's best for cattle. And then we go down to electric netting, like you would use for broilers or temporary pastures for sheep or goats. You know, it's a psychological barrier. It's got advantage to predator control because of the square netting and it's electrified the whole height of it. It's easier to install. Some would argue that it's easy to move. Uh, Disadvantages are it's expensive. Animals getting caught up in the fence is a concern, and it's less durable. And it's great for small livestock. So that's just a really good quick guide to just the different fencing types that you can reference. We're going to talk just quickly on some fencing challenges, and I'm realizing that this is going pretty quickly, maybe right on time, but we've got lots of time for questions. So run out pasture, overstocked fields, or no supplemental feeding can result in cattle becoming discontent and looking for new grazing areas. Cattle are often lured by the aftergrass from hayland, neighboring fields, apple trees. Broken areas or weak spots indicate poor fence maintenance. The cause could be that post spacing is too far apart or broken posts have not been replaced. Weather or an unwanted animal can spook cattle and nothing will keep them in. However, this is not a common occurrence. Neighboring bulls can compete between the fences and destroy fence lines, so it's not a good practice to introduce competing bulls between fences. You want to have, you know, a good paddock between them to keep them apart. Electric fences are great protection when they are working. However, they require management, and it's important to prevent grounding by weeds and trees. Power can be turned off accidentally. Batteries go dead or break. A break can occur, which is often noticed only once the cattle are out. The frequency of electric fence outages should be minimal in a normally operating farm. Proper grounding of electric fences is critical, and make sure to have all the fence posts driven 2 feet in the ground to give a good solid connection point. Again, wooden post should be pressure treated. That gives you good lifetime on them. I know we all probably have untreated posts, and I just find they only a year or two and they're rotting right off at the ground level. Temporary fence are often used for short grazing times on hay fields or interval areas where flooding occurs. Cattle with calves should have a minimum of 2 electric wires, one strand of electric fence containing the cows on a temporary basis if adequate pasture is provided. Fences are only as strong as its weakest link, right? So, especially if you leave the gate open, right? Livestock can become discontent if they face low water levels, poor water quality, or large walks to water. I've read in other documents that uh, if you keep the water within 600 feet of the cattle at all times, individual animals will break away from the group and go to the water. But after 600 feet, then the whole herd will travel to the water point, and so that's when you can get into a water tank being emptied and tipped over, pushed through the fence. So just making sure that you have enough water pressure or a big enough quantity of water to prevent that from happening. Riverbanks, wooded areas, and other natural barriers are not considered a fence. So make sure, I think every year here in the valley on the Cornwallis River, we have a couple cattle to get down in the mud. Uh, that's a riverbank is not a suitable fencing. Often older fences will have an offset electric wire, offset about 10 inches from the post and 36 inches off the ground. This generally extends the life of the older fences and is a great way to introduce electricity to the livestock. So now we're just gonna talk briefly on the Nova Scotia Fences and Detention of Stray Livestock Act. So this is um, an act, a regulation that requires owners of livestock farms to build and maintain fences to prevent livestock from escaping their farms. Under this act, if any person believes that livestock fence is not adequate, they may notify the clerk of the municipality in which the land is located, and the clerk will refer the matter to the chair of the Fences Arbitration Committee for that municipality. And for municipalities that don't have a Fences Arbitration Committee, other procedures may be followed. But this is just, to prevent animals from getting out, or maybe there's animals that are chronically getting out, and so the owner of the livestock um, can be made to pay for upgrades to the fences if somebody has to be hired to do it, or they can be required to fix it themselves. The stray livestock can also be seized and auctioned off to recover costs associated with damage caused by them. So it's good to stay on the good side of this. I think there were cattle actually this past winter that were auctioned off using this uh, act. So um, it's just important to maintain your fences. And finally, just some references from the guidelines. The Canada Plan Service. I don't know if anybody on the call. It's hard because I'm just talking to Georgia here, really. Um, if anybody on the call has seen that Canada Plan Service, it's a great resource for all kinds of different things. Gives you plans on how to build gates and mineral feeders and different barn plans and stuff like that. Perennia with the pasture manual, Soil and Crop Improvement Association fact sheets. Um, there was some information pulled from the University of Tennessee, planning and building fences on the farm, Gallagher Canada, and the Department of Agriculture Fences and Detention and Stray Livestock Act. So I really appreciate everybody showing up, and I think, is there some questions there, Georgia? Maybe we could zip back to the title screen here and
That's great. Thank
answer
you.
some questions.
Certainly. Yeah, thank you again, Colin. We have one question here. You may be covering this later, but since you've mentioned investment a few times, could you give a general idea of what I should expect in terms of cost per acre for different fencing options, specifically for sheep or goats?
Yeah. Um, I don't know specifically for sheep and goats. I've heard a general figure of $1,000 an acre. and what that includes, I'm not exactly sure, but the 14 acres that we've fenced last year for the Living Labs project, that was like 8 grand, including the fences, the charger, I mean, and the gate, and that was timeless fence posts, 3-strand wire with division fence and 3 or 4 high speed geared reels. So um, yeah, I think, especially for page wire, installation costs are going to add up for sure. Uh, so, maybe budgeting for $1,000 an acre might not be a bad choice. I don't know, Georgia, if you have any figures from the off-calf applications, in general that you have top of your head, but
Not at the top of my head, and
no.
yeah, probably depends on the supplier that you're going with too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also if you're doing the labor yourself,
Mm.
uh, that's a big that's a big part of it. I always add, labor is always just as much as materials.
Awesome. We have some more questions coming in here. What do you recommend for perimeter corner H bracing for an organic operation?
Yes, this question is probably about pressure treated posts, I would assume. Um, I think, I can't really endorse one brand, but at home personally, I've used the timeless fence posts. Those aren't great corner posts, but it certainly solves the issue of the pressure treated posts on organic land. Um, I guess you'll have to source some cedar corner posts. Um, there may also be some plastic options. I don't know. It's been a few years since I have studied organic agriculture, so I don't know. Is plastic an issue on the organic farm?
Feel free to answer there. No, I was also wondering about like hemlock because that's typically long has a long life, doesn't it?
Yeah, Colin Kent has recommended larch. I was just going to say something like a black locust. It's very, very good um, durability in soil, but you'd probably have to grow it yourself. I don't think you can really source them commercially. Um, but they grow quick.
Okay, we'll move on to the next. And Silas, if you have a follow-up question, feel free to put it in the questions. Nick says the Fencing Arbitration Act is fairly odd. Do you know of many municipalities that struggle with the enforcement?
Yes. Yes, it's just from, the ag rep side of thing, I know that there are a number that I don't think they have a chair for the committee, and so it's hard to get attention about it. So yeah, but I know here in Kings County they have a counselor appointed to that role, so it's pretty easy to get some attention on that. But yeah, I think the counties find hard it. I think they find it hard to find someone and to get that committee rolling. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Carolyn, I missed the start of the meeting, but my question was, what is the regulations for signage on electric fencing? I asked Kings County, but they weren't sure. Thanks, Helen.
Yeah, I don't think there's I don't think there's regulations around signage. I'm not sure. I'll actually have to look into it. Donald and I were talking earlier about it, and so we'll have to find that information out. I'll write that down, and maybe we'll get back to the participants.
Yeah,
I know maybe from your insurance company standpoint, they might require it. There might be municipal bylaws that talk about it. So, um, looking at it from that side of things. But I'll look and see if provincially there's regulations around it. And Margaret was just saying there's some changes coming in 2025 to the organic standards that would affect using treated posts in certain situations. And you
Mhm.
can reuse treated posts that were already used on the operation.
Thank you, Margaret. Yeah, we can do a follow-up to this. It's easy enough
Yeah.
to do. Nick asks again, or just to go back to what he asked before about the enforcement.
Yep.
Is there improvements that need to be made to the act?
That I'm not sure. I'm not like thoroughly um, well read on it, so I guess I wouldn't be able to comment on it. But um, yeah, I'd recommend trying to read through it, see what you can learn.
Yes, and to your knowledge, who would municipalities usually hire to do that enforcement?
In Kings County's case, it's just one of the counselors.
Is it?
The person happens to be a farmer themselves, so has a level of experience.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think it would just be one of the counselors would be assigned to the role, I would think.
Okay. Uh,
Colin Kent commented that the act could use some modernization.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe the bylaw officer would be part of the committee.
Right. Great. I do want to mention that we have some pasture walks coming up. Our first one is at Tyler Jordan's on the 26th, at Jordan Natural Acres. And we are going to be at Webster's Farm again, and looking at the land swap that Living Labs is doing there, which Colin is involved with. And we're actually going to Evan Kleiner's in Yarmouth. And who else are we seeing? And then we're going to Mabu, actually. So that's just for June and July. So I will actually put the registration for those in the chat for you as well. Any more questions? It's open for Colin. Is there any like interesting or fun or really useful tools that you really want to drive home for people besides gloves, I guess?
Well, honestly, like the most handy thing I find is just using your own body as the measuring tool, right? Like I said, the top of my hip, the middle of my thigh, and then my knee would be kind of where I would put my wires. And so don't need to carry around the additional um, uh, fence posts, so measuring tape. So just using yourself as a measuring tool, I think, is probably the most handy thing. And honestly, investing in a roll of baler twine for making nice straight lines, like when I mark out a new pasture. I'll find where I'm putting my corners, drive those posts, and then I'm draw a very tight line of baler twine between the two posts, and that helps you get real nice straight lines. Um, it kind of worked against me at Webster's Farm doing my center division, which was like, I don't know, 900 feet long, on a windy day. So looking down at it kind of has a nice little bow. But they say a crooked row of corn has more yield. So I'm assuming a crooked fence line has more pasture.
Colin says grounding plates are useful for those rocky areas when grounding posts cannot be driven down 4 to 6 feet as well.
Yeah, I've even heard of people burying a sheet of galvanized roofing metal. That would have quite a surface area for grounding. So, um, I I've heard of that. I don't, it wasn't necessarily here that they did it. It was just on a podcast that they had said it. So, but it sounds like a great idea.
Margaret may be able to touch on this, but we were just at Poljanka Farms, and John had a tool, and he was able to touch the fence essentially and turn it off, and then like just that one line, I guess, and then
Okay.
and turn it back on. He was quite proud of it. So I was like,
Yes. Yes. And Carrie just texted me. Apparently, I wondered why Colin Kent was so keen. There's one, two, three, four Colin Kents. So apparently Carrie is one of those Collins. Uh,
okay.
so yeah. Thank you to all the Colin Kents that showed up tonight.
Margaret says, "Oh, that's the fence tester Turner offer thing and is incredibly useful." Thank you, Margaret.
Yes. Yeah, some of the higher grade fencers, they just, you can put the tester on and hit the button and turn it off. When I worked up at the Maritime Beef Test Station and Napan in the summer, they had one like that, and it was a lifesaver. Uh, yeah,
Steps and yeah.
yeah. Also the ones that ramp up the voltage as the grass lays on it to burn the grass off. That's also a nice feature. Yeah.
Very good. Well, it's 9:01, and if there are no other questions, then I think we can shut it down for tonight. Um, I'm gonna say feel free to open it or to follow up with Colin for any further questions. He's really good at answering them and has lots of experience.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, thank you for this, Colin, so much. It's
No
a great.
problem. Thanks, Georgia, for being willing to do this too, like taking the idea and running with it. It's great that you're so eager to do things like this. So yeah, I really appreciate it too.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Fabian, where can we get a printed copy of the updated pasture manual? So if you want to email programs at Perennia, programs at perennia.ca, and I just put it in the chat there, so it should be available. And then we can, we're printing them off now. We're going to do about 200, 300, and we can mail them out. I guess depending on how our mail system works right now. I guess, is there a strike happening right now? Either way,
Yeah, and
we
we can probably have a couple copies at our offices. It's like Georgia and I were talking earlier, when Perennia reprinted the old pasture manual, we had them here for offer. So
yeah,
we could probably have a couple of those on hand too in the regional offices.
yeah. So that's easy. I'll load you guys up with copies, and then
And maybe take a wad of them out to the pasture walks.
yes, that is a great idea. I'll just keep some in my truck. So
Yeah.
hope to see people out at the pasture walks. We'll do the ones in June and July. And then come the end of June, we'll have our next series ready to go. So for August, September, October as well. So that's
So
going.
Georgia, did you want to say about kind of the next stage to this fencing guidelines workshop? Did you want to kind of do a quick introduction to that or just hold off on that?
Is that the demonstration?
Yeah,
Yes, we are in the works of it, but it's very early. So we're hoping to
yeah,
have a fencing demonstration. We're calling it a garden at the moment,
yeah,
and hoping to be able to have physical fencing set up, so we can actually go out, touch some things, see some setups, see some different suppliers and so on. So
yeah.
stay tuned. It
And
is,
we'll make an event of it as well. So
yeah,
where we talk about each one. So yeah,
yeah, do some corners. Yeah, get some lifters too.
yeah,
Just fun stuff we can talk
yeah.
about. Yeah.
No, it's
Okay.
all good. Thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah. Thank you. And this will be recorded and it will be on the Perennia website within a couple weeks. Okay.